Pejman, welcome to the show, man.
Justin, it's so nice to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. I think it's tempting to not cover your story because we've talked about it a lot, but I know people are going to hear this and haven't heard your background, and it's probably one of the most incredible stories in venture. So we had to start there. How did you get into venture in the first place, Pejman?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I just think like this is repeated stories, but that's fun for me to share it. Yeah, I'm a venture capitalist, not by design. I grew up in Iran during the war and revolution, so the first 15 years of post revolution was tough time. So I think that made me really strong to really cope with what has happened there. And then I started to play soccer. I hosted Iran's most popular radio talk show when I was 17, 18, exactly what you do today. And then I went to university. I dropped school and I ended up going to Germany because my parents lived there to continue my education and play soccer. But my brother who left Iran before me forced me to go to U.S. embassy, and I didn't have any plan to come to America. But somehow the counselor liked me, gave me a visa to come to U.S. So I came here in 1992. We did literally no plan. I just came here to this town called St. Carlos because my uncle used to live there, and I didn't speak one word English. I had $700, and um, but you do these things in your early 20s and you don't assess any risk. Anyway, actually, that $700 was gone because I actually was in love with a girl in Iran, and I thought, so I'm going to lose her now. So the best way, just call her. And at that time, it was no WhatsApp, no internet phone. I had to go to every day to payphone in downtown. It was a payphone in downtown San Carlos, and I don't know, it was like $4 or $5 per minute. So I had this bag of quarters every day going to call her. So the money was gone, and what do? You don't speak the language, and you want to work. So I ended up getting a job in San Jose, but my first job was working in a car wash. I bought a 1973 Chevy for 5 payments of $150 because I didn't have money. So I was driving every day from San Carlos to San Jose, washing cars and come back. But I think I'm the best car washer the world has ever seen. Nobody washed cars like me. And I was doing that, going to college every night, and I ended up getting a job at the yogurt shop here in Redwood City. And I ran out of money. I slept in the car, I slept in the street, and I slept in the attic of the yogurt shop. So for a few months, I lived above the yogurt shop in an attic, which was like the storage, very low ceiling, no windows. There's a photo of me. If you look at my Twitter feed, photo up there is
Yep.
on at Twitter. Anyway, I was waking up every morning 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. working in the yogurt shop, going to college again at night. And one of those nights I saw an advertising for the Persian rug gallery in downtown Palo Alto. Um, like this type of Persian rug. This is actually 130 years old carpet.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then I ended up to get that job over there. And again, little by little, I became a really good rug salesman. And one year, I remember I sold a couple of $1 million worth of rugs. I mean, even our majority of our software companies cannot achieve that in the short period of time I did it. And Persian rugs, you typically come to the gallery and say, "Page, when I bought a home in Palo Alto, and I'm looking for a rug for my living room." So we start to look at rugs, and then we bring all of those rugs to your home. By going to people's home, I used to spend a couple of hours with them and their families, their spouses, their partners, and children. I realized a few years into it, they're all venture capitalists, founders of tech companies, and I decided I want to be one of them. I was very lucky because I had this access to the most elite people in tech that normally you cannot see them, but I was hanging out with them Sunday afternoon at their home doing barbecue while selling Persian rugs. And I realized this network has a huge value, and I convinced the owner of the rug gallery to partner with me to start our own investment firm, which was angel investing because I didn't have money. For me, was I knew I wanted to play NBA, but I never become LeBron James, but I can be the best agent. So I knew the network has a lot of value. So I started to put a lot of networking events at the Rug Gallery. I remember once I brought the entire Sequoia's senior partnership with 100 entrepreneurs around Persian food. This is late 90s that none of these things that you see today existed. There was no TechCrunch, no Y Combinator. So it was very refreshing for people to see this community building. And we started to invest to startups, and we made terrible investments to begin with. But I was very lucky to meet some really exceptional founders early on, and fast forward, I ended up being the first investor in Dropbox, Gusto, and so on. So
There's a lot there that I want to unpack, and I've heard versions of that, and certain questions I have, my brain goes to certain things that I always am curious about. First being, where did that work ethic come from for you? Did you always have that? Was it just like survival? You had to? I've heard that story and I've always been curious, like, where did that come from for you?
yeah, I don't know. I think it's just part of me. I always want to win. I always, I play soccer on the streets, and at the same time, and you are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, and war and planes come every night to bomb your city. Just you develop a kind of different mindset. I actually think when you see the dark side of humanity, everything else has a different perspective, and you realize opportunities, and you live in a different view of the world. So I've seen that being a teenager in Iran. And I think the work ethic is, I think it's something that you don't learn, that they just do it. But for me
Yeah.
was, the ability to do something for myself or my family, and build kind of extraordinary life of whatever I can do.
You had a unique situation, obviously, having these relationships with people who are very prominent in the industry at the earliest of stages in your career as well. But a lot of people, when they have these opportunities, don't act on it necessarily. They don't change careers completely. They don't do this thing. What compelled you to even want that in terms of seeing what they were doing? You knew all these people in tech and like CEOs and VCs at the top, but like you were selling rugs. What compelled you to be like, I want that? Like, I'm just so curious about that because I haven't heard enough of you talk about that
That's a
side of
good
things.
question. I think I was amazed by who they are, not necessarily because how wealthy they were. Obviously, big homes, they can afford expensive rugs. But for me, until then, business was you build like this and you sell it. You build furniture, you sell it. I never knew you can build so much based on knowledge and create so much wealth and jobs, and change society. And I felt that it's a very unique opportunity in my life, and I can play a role. But I wasn't afraid to be part of the community, which is well guarded. And the second thing, I think, credit to the culture of Silicon Valley. No one never judged me of an outsider, so they welcome me. Um, Part of it is I have a very genuine desire to get to know people. And always people mix this with networking, which I think it's a wrong way to look at building relationship. Some people think networking is a task you work, and then after 5 o'clock you just go network. But I think it has to be part of you, part of your life, and it has to be very authentic. I really like to get to know people, and that actually gave me an ability to get to know my customers, who ended up being venture capitalists, and later on I either co-invested in them in Dropbox, or actually now recruited them to become the CTO of my portfolio company. So um, yeah, I think it's the really the ability to create so much value based on knowledge, and be able to impact society and future for everyone, was like, for me, it was astonishing.
Yeah, what a time to be in that environment at that age, obviously, where people you knew from the rug shop were going, I mean, they're top of their game. I'm curious with that too. One thing I just can't gloss over because I'm just actually fascinated by. You mentioned you sold like $8 million worth of rugs, which is kind of insane. Like, that's a lot. Why did you excel at that so much? What were you just like good at selling in terms of relationships? Did you play different than the other people? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, I actually think I never sold rugs. I maybe sold the impact of Persian rugs in your home. When you buy a tie, you never buy a tie. You buy how you look with the tie. So the actual tie is not as important how you look with the tie. So I actually did the same thing with rugs, and it comes really naturally to me that yes, you can give a lot of information about Persian rugs, what they are and how they are made and the value. But at the end of the day, people really want a beautiful home with Persian rugs. And that's how I did it. And yeah, I think those millions worth of rug selling was at the peak of the dot-com bubble. Also, so credit to the market as
We'll take that. One thing I'm curious about with your journey and everything as well. I know there's this gap of like you decide to get into this angel investing world and startups, and that's maybe around 2000 or so. And then if you look at when Pear started, I guess it wasn't called Pear at the time, but 2013 or something. So it's this long time of you investing and learning and all this stuff, which I want to get into in a second. But in the earliest days of you starting to angel invest, why were people taking you seriously, letting you invest all of these things? I'm curious about that in the early stages.
yeah. I think if you look at this market, there's two sides: entrepreneurs and venture capitalists. I had a very close relationship with top venture capitalists, and I started to develop relations with entrepreneurs. Obviously, when we started to invest, people there were not many angel investors in town. I think Ron Conway was like really
Hmm.
the pioneer of angel investing at that time. So I realize there's a value for connecting entrepreneurs to venture capitalists in the right way, and entrepreneurs to executives and other founders. So many of my customers who became my friends were founders or CTOs of top tech companies, and they became advisors to these entrepreneurs. So I think building that relationship and creating that match was really magical. And entrepreneurs realize through me they can get access to some really amazing people, and venture capitalists realize I have a really good deal flow. And I think that's how I started it. But obviously when you spend a lot of time in any kind of business, you can learn it. And little by little I learned the world around me, that how a startup works, who are the players, and what kind of entrepreneurs I want to work with.
I know you said at that time there wasn't, the same type of tools we have today in terms of connecting with people, this virtual worlds, and like even like YC and all these other things weren't there. Different time back then. Would you have done it the same? I mean, today in terms of building genuine relationships with people. Obviously, you were in like the perfect environment in Silicon Valley, which was great. But like even for someone today who like wants to get into investing, a lot of times it's like these underrepresented investors who like want to invest in their community, or other people like who are not getting the dollars typically. But like, how would you look at that today in terms of building relationships and networks in the world we now live in, with different tools available, with different things out there? I'm just curious on how you would approach that.
Yeah, I think you have more tools to expand it, both online and offline. Even today, Pear has done over 100 events every year, and these events for people or 400 people. So we do the same thing, but we expanded offline, I mean, online, using video conferencing. I think you can do both. I don't think doing one of them is enough. But the most important thing, you should be able to love what you do, which is creating um, a platform, say it, that you're really enjoying bringing people together, and it has to be very authentic, very genuine. I would have, I mean, today I think there are more tools. Obviously, it's overdone. You have to be really careful about how you bring community together and how you foster it, how you grow it. And we always at Pair, we have built a very active, engaged community. So there is more
Definitely.
tools today, but at the same time, there are more competition. People are, over, this networking or events kind of overused. There's so many of them, so you need to be very careful. And where is your value, and how do you want to build that relationship with your network?
So back then in 2000, you decide to get angel investing. You're doing this thing for a while before you actually launch Pear, which is actually Pejman Mar at the time. Take me through that time in that like decade plus, you learning and building relationships. Like, how are you going about doing that in terms of the growth and things you were learning at that time to become a better
Sure.
investor? I'm
Yeah.
curious.
So I made money and I started to do kind of angel investing full time. And 2010, I realized I'm on the cap table of the company. Let's say raised $1 million, and I was an angel investing, and I saw a couple of other VC funds have invested a few $100,000. But entrepreneurs are left alone right after raising $1 million, especially first time entrepreneurs. And I felt there's an opportunity to build an institution to serve founders at the earliest stages. The question was, can I walk to a garage full of founders and claim I'm your best partner? The answer was no, because I had a great track record. Everybody knew me. I knew how the whole system works, but I never built a cheap product. And I knew in order to be successful for a firm like what I had imagined I want to build, you need to have that DNA. So I reached out to my current partner, Mar Hershenson, in 2009-10. We actually know each other for 22 years. I funded her husband, Matt Hershenson, in 2000, a company called Danger. And then I funded Mars company, second company, in 2003. It's actually, I syndicated a $2.5 million round in 2004, 2003, 2004. And, going back to that time, we had to go to people's home, making pitches at people's home in Palo Alto and take actual check, go deposit. Today, you go on Angel List, you create a syndicate, you click a button, you get the money. So things has changed. So throughout that process, I really got to know Mar, and we built a great relationship. And it took me 4 years to convince her. So and she was the only person I ever talked to start the firm. And if she would have said no, I would have not done it. In 2013, 12, 13, I changed strategy. I said, Mar, instead of why don't you come and join me at Coupa Cafe and just provide advice to entrepreneurs? And she said fine. So she came 30 minutes, 45 minutes a day, and then 3 months down the road she was full-time meeting entrepreneurs. So I won, and we partnered in 2013. We want to build the best seed fund ever existed. We want to build the firm that outlasts two of us. From day one, we actually very complementary team, but we are kind of yin and yang. I'm a college dropout. She's a Stanford PhD professor at Stanford. She started 3 companies. She has 14 patents. I have 0 patents. I never worked actually for the tech company, but I had a lot of scars on my body as an angel investor. So, and then we have an utmost respect for each other's opinion. So since then, Pear is growing. We're 20 people. Fund 1 is top 1% performing fund. And we are closing fund 4, and it's just growing. I think after 9.5 years, almost 10 years, we reach our own product market fit in the market. Now it's time to really build the infrastructure and the team. So Pear, in a nutshell, is specializing in pre-seed and seed, and that's what we do.
Going back to one thing you mentioned there, 4 years to convince Mar to join you. Like, why that long? What was her hesitation? What were you trying along the way?
Well,
Like, I'm
I,
curious.
I wanted one to have a really exceptional entrepreneurs with great experience in being technical. So I think she checked mark, but more importantly, similar characteristic of really good for people, good with people, doing it for the right cause, giving back to the community. We were part of it, and that trust was always there. So it's really hard to build partnership for like decades if you don't know each other really well. And I felt we know each other very well. And yeah, I think it was just either with her or I don't start a firm.
You had a lot of experience, obviously, going even before then. You have invested in a lot of companies at that point in time. Going into that, when you started with her, take me through raising that first fund, though, because a lot of that, if you haven't raised a fund before, one, you don't like what are you getting into? It's a little bit different, but then raising maybe from angels as a founder, and you didn't do that. You were investing. Take me through even raising that first fund. How was that? I'm curious about that experience for you.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. One, both of us don't come from venture capital background. Obviously, I was an angel investor. She was an entrepreneur. So convincing we are doing something, it takes time. Luckily, there were a lot of co-investor with me throughout my angel investing life that they invested with me. These are mostly individuals. And then what we did, I think that helped us, that Mar and I started to do angel investing together. We built a portfolio of 6 companies before we started the firm. And that was a really, really good portfolio to show that we can work together. We pick really good companies. These are the co-investors. And then we started to really think about how differentiated we are. And one of the things we want to do was really helping students start companies. So we started at Stanford. We built a couple of programs. And that really helped us to convince some institution, which was very hard, to partner with us, Fund 1.
In that process of raising for Fund 1, then, did you know? I'm just curious the direction, because you have an idea when you start this of like, we want to build like the best early stage venture fund, essentially. You're raising these LPs in Fund 1 that in theory, if you get institutions that are right ones, they can be institutions for the rest of your funds in theory. Were you thinking about that already in that fund one? Did you know, like, okay, we're going to start at this size, then this size? I'm just curious on how much you had kind of
No,
mapped out.
we didn't know it. We actually thought we need to raise $25 million, and then after getting to $20 million with 25, we realized I knew that we need to keep a lot reserved for the winners, given the background
Mm,
of the angel investing. So we realized it's become short. So we picked $50 million. That's one thing. Um, I knew from the beginning I want to build community. If Stanford Business School that teaches a case about us, and the email I sent Mar very first time, it's there in 2010, and the idea was getting a home next to Stanford, invite some of the best students to either live and work in that home and invest in the best one. So that was kind of the genesis of the whole idea to build community with Stanford students, because I funded students at Stanford to build multi-billion-dollar companies, and obviously Mar was she started her company while getting her PhD. So the idea, it wasn't as specific that today with all of the programs we had, but generally was, let's start, let's focus on a community that has shown historically great companies come out of that community, which are students, in particular Stanford. So that's how we started. That's how we pitched it. That's how we built programs. For the first 5 years of Pear, everybody knew us as the firm that does only Stanford students. It's not true. We did it many other people, like college dropout, people who didn't go to elite school, and so on. But that was kind of the focus to begin with. But now we expanded everywhere. So I think for anybody who wants to start a firm, I think there are a few things you need to really work on. It one, how are you differentiated with anybody else? And
mm-hmm.
I think it has to be very crystal clear. A little bit different is not enough. Then you need to work on your sourcing. So what kind of playbook you have? I think the era of being part of the small community or going to conferences or tweet a little bit is gone. You need to have an exceptional differentiated playbook for sourcing. Then it comes to the question that you have the ability to pick winners early. And the third and most important thing, how do you help companies? I wake up every morning and think about why entrepreneurs should take money from Pear. And you need to have a great answer for it. That how do you help portfolio companies and why they should take your money? I've
Well, we
seen a
have
lot
to.
of managers or partners, they start and think about one or two of these, not the third one. But you need to be good at all three of them consistently over decades.
This has been a number of years already with Pear. Today, what is the answer to that question in terms of why entrepreneurs work with Pear?
Yeah, I think we are pre-seed and seed specialists. That's the only thing we do. Investment team have started and sold 10 companies. So my partners have started and sold companies to Cisco, Yahoo, Instacart, Zynga, you name it. So we have that entrepreneurship DNA. Historically, we have been the first investor in some of the most iconic tech companies, including DoorDash, Dropbox, Gusto, Applovin, Soundhound, Lending Club, you name it. So a lot of history, what we have seen. And on top of it, we have built the platform to help entrepreneurs. For example, we have a recruiting agency inside Pear that if you come to Pear, we hire your first and second engineers for free. And this is led by former head of global talent of Instacart, who took the company to 3,000 people. So we have a team of 4 recruiters in-house that if you don't do anything for you, we hire your engineers. And then ability to really, for example, companies that we lead pre-seed and seed, 72% of them have raised Series A. The average is 42%, so is really high. So yes, combination of the team, the platform, the know-how, and the experience that we have.
Was that for you in terms of thinking about the platform side of it, which is a very important piece? You have some on like the benchmarks of the world who don't really have anything for platform side necessarily. You have ACC&Z doing a ton on platform, massive teams. Did you always know that in terms of what you wanted to offer, that was going to be an important piece of Pear for your organization?
Not at the beginning. At the beginning, I think when we started almost 10 years ago, it wasn't like this. So it was really the back of my experience investing in Mar as an entrepreneur. And then we built it up,
Mm,
the sourcing platform. So for years was how do we build sourcing platform? And if you go on our website, we have obviously Dorm, our actively programs at university. We have female engineers circles, which is targeting female engineers. We have product managers summit, we have PhD summit. So we have built this kind of playbook how to partner with entrepreneurs before anybody else. So the sourcing part, we spend a lot of time. Then we realize entrepreneurs request need more than capital and know-how guidance. They want to hire engineers, they want to introduction to your first 10 customers, they want understanding go to market strategy, they want to access for software. So then we decided to build this slowly, and now we built the recruiting agency in house, we're building the go to market, we have a software team, they're building software. So um, that's Pear. I think in the venture capital business, there is not one way you could do this business. I think you
Of
could
course.
do Pear way, you can do Sequoia, you can do Y Combinator, you can do the benchmark way to do it. The most important thing, whatever strategy you take, you have to focus on it and become the best in the world at it. If you become the second version of whatever exists, you won't become an exceptional fund. So I don't think there is one model that works. It's a variety of different models that work for different managers and different strategies.
With what Pear is doing in your model that you just mentioned, what do you think is the ultimate in terms of being the best in the world at it? What this looks like ideally? You mentioned multi-generational organization you're starting here with Pear. Like, what does that look like eventually? You think?
Yeah, we want to be obviously an amazing performing fund in terms of the return of capital to our LPs, which I talk about it. But we want to be a global platform that takes ideas to product market fit, which is in VC language is from pre-seed and seed to Series A. That's where I think there's a big opportunity. No one owns it. If I ask you which firm is the best pre-seed and seed firm in the world, there's no answer, and we are not there yet. Our aspiration is to become that firm. So really, people who have an idea or prototype think of Pear as the first destination that they can help you to get the product market fit.
Are there others that you're like, okay, I just want to give some props to because they're just that good at pre-seed and seed? I just you said no stand out in terms of the best per se. There's obviously good ones.
No, they're great, amazing. I think
Of course,
there's no one firm everybody says this is the best
Mm,
firm that does these things. People have
sure,
different ideas.
yeah.
People say first round might be a great one over there,
Mm.
or some people pick another firm to do it. Some people say no, the multi-stage firm, Sequoia and this and Horowitz of the world have a great seed practice to do it. So it's a different opinion on that. I think we have an opportunity to become the number one over there, and I think the only way we could do it is just prove it in our performance. I think you can say whatever in our business is very easy to measure your success is just the performance
Yep.
of the fund. Nothing else matters. You can build all the platform in the world, you can have all the content in the world, you can be shining in any conferences. At the end, the performance matters, and that's something it's very clear what you see on the paper, that how much money you have returned to our LPs.
We can't not talk about how you analyze founders. So I want to go through that next because you have so much experience in terms of doing this. And I know you mentioned in like other podcasts how some of your first investments were just like terrible in terms of picking some of your earlier ones way back in the day. How are you analyzing founders today? You're decades in now. You've had a lot of experience. What are you looking for?
Yeah, so and this is not only me, Pear, as a team, we
Yep.
want to work with entrepreneurs who have obviously committed to be entrepreneur, people who have deep relationship with the market and the problem they're solving. Either they have lived through that problem or they have academic background. So, and they're very articulate about the problem exists, the market exists, and they are the best person in the world who can solve this problem. That's one. We like founding team who have chemistry and relationship with each other. So people who either work at the same company or they do rock climbing every weekend or they went to some high school, they play basketball. Just that chemistry is very important. We are looking for founders who can attract talents. It's very important to see, can you attract the best talents in the world. We like I like founders who are paranoid in a healthy way. Means they have this vision where they go, but they questions themselves, so they always want to improve. We like captains of the ship. Captains of the ship leave last. They really believe their customer, their team, it's beyond themselves. If these are check marks, then we look at the size of the market and how big this company can become. even given that, we still make mistakes by not getting
Of
to know the
course.
founders easily, and then overlook. And I think the best founders are the ones who really articulate a vision that you'd never thought of it. They're just creating a future that is exciting, and they can clearly explain that.
You have so much of a presence from in person early on in growing, and as we said, there's a lot of like now virtual things happening. People had to like kind of invest the first time all this virtual stuff. How do you look at that? Virtual versus in person, evaluating founders, wanting to have time with them in person, spend time with them in person versus like just on Zoom. Like, how have you thought about that in terms of how Pear
Yeah,
operates?
I think keeping the video conferencing give us an opportunity to expand our horizon and interact with a lot of founders, versus for the founders the same thing. You can interact with a lot of VCs, but eventually we all, especially these days, we request that we meet them in person. I think you get to know the founders even over a walk, or I tell you, you get to know so much about the founder. Anyone who, how do you say thank you to a server at lunch? It's very telling. So we spend a lot of time getting to know the founders, and obviously we meet them over Zoom to begin with. But at the end of the day, if you want to partner for the next 10, 20 years, it's worth to get together for a few hours.
Today, this okay, so Pear is almost it's coming up on a decade of Pear plus more angel investing. What fuels you today, Pejman? I mean, you've done a lot already in the industry. Obviously, you're continuing on. Pear is doing great. Just what drives you at this point in your career, in your life, in this phase with Pear? I'm curious about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm really grateful and honored to have this opportunity to learn from entrepreneurs. So every day you wake up and you see amazing entrepreneurs who educate you about particular sectors. So the learning curve is amazing. But I think this is just the beginning of Pair. We have an opportunity to build an extraordinary firm who can do two things. One, help entrepreneurs build really defining, category defining companies that can um, really create a better future for all of us and our children. So maybe a very, very tiny, small part of in the future. That's very exciting. And second, majority of our LPs, over 80% or 85%, are nonprofit organization. These are firefighters, family endowments, people who make home for homeless people, cancer researchers, foundations which are sending underserved children to school. So that responsibility, it's enormous, but at the same time is very fulfilling.
You came to US from Iran, years ago. Is that something you look for in terms of immigrant founders and supporting them and how you can help them as well as because you have that history and you can relate to it so well. I'm just curious on anything on that you try to also use at Pair.
No, obviously being an immigrant is like being a founder. You come here, you don't know the language, or maybe you know the language. So you have to survive with limited resources. That's what founders
Sure,
do. But not specifically, we look at only on immigrant. I think there are pretty amazing people here that have grown up here in Palo Alto or in Los
of
Angeles or
course.
New York and Dallas, and they're pretty exceptional. So we don't look for any particular founders with any particular background. We just look for the best people who are the best at what they do, and the best people in particular company they can start.
We're almost done here. I'm just curious, any last parting words for founders who are considering Pair, working with you, wanting to know more about the team, anything else you want to share with them?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we just launched a new website. There's so much information. I think we actually have a page called Why Pair. I encourage you to read it. It just explains in detail why we should partner with you. But in the world of too much capital, everything's going on. I think if I was a founder, I look for the team who have the background of helping founders get to product market fit, and they have historical track record to show that repeatedly have done these things. So I think Perry is very much qualified to be the best partner for entrepreneurs at the earliest stages.
Pejman, where's the best place for people to get in touch with Pair, connect with you if they'd like to as well?
Yeah, my email is pejman@pair.vc. You can always reach out to me. And we have a beautiful new office next to Stanford. Used to be a beloved burger shop for Stanford students. We turned it to an amazing office. So you won't miss it. If you drive on El Camino, you always see our sign.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. It was great. And, I love what you do. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you.